All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to One Soccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming. I am joined by Alex Gonge-Ruzic, and today we're doing a little afternoon stream, early afternoon, depending if you're on the West Coast or East Coast, ahead of tonight's matchup between Canada and Suriname. So we're going to do a nice little preview of that game, a little Q&A, chatting about a couple other topics as well. But first things first, Alex, how are you doing? One of the first times I've seen you since we've come back from Calgary.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Holding up. Just been, enjoying the week being back home. But hey, miss Calgary. It was a great place. A lot of great people out there. So it was cool to have that experience over the weekend.
Absolutely. And if you guys are just joining us in the chat, say hello, drop a like on the stream, and let us know what your guys' score predictions are for tonight. I've given one already, Alex. I don't know why. It just came to my mind right away. I'm going with a 1-0 Canada type game. I think it's going to be difficult. I think if there's some maybe newer Canadian fans out there who are not very familiar with Suriname, they've done a lot of recruitment in terms of dual nationals. They have a pretty decent team. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park by any stretch. I think it'll be a competitive match. I do see the Canadians getting a result, which is why I'm going with a 1-0, but I do think it'll be a competitive fixture tonight. What are your thoughts on a score prediction? I know we're doing them right away, but I want to get the chat talking, so let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 Canada. There's Suriname's a good team. It's gonna be a tough matchup away. Probably be a bit hot. They're playing on turf, which you don't always see for anyone outside of Canada and the U.S. Even the U.S. does a pretty good job of sticking to grass. But despite the surface, despite missing a Davies, I think there's enough firepower in this Canadian team, and there's a stylistic matchup advantage that I think will help Canada. We can dive into that. So I say 2-0 Canada. They get the job done. David scores one of the goals, and on to leg two.
All right, so David's taken the scoring lead between him and Laren. Is that what you're saying tonight? Laren's not going to get the other one?
I said one of the two. I mean, Laren could be the other two. I just feel like David's definitely scoring. We'll see about Laren.
I like it. It was funny. I was talking to a couple of Suriname supporters that were, I guess they weren't overly familiar with where Canada plays all the time, but they said like a big advantage is that we're going to be playing on turf. And I said, oh, brother, you're talking to the wrong person here, because I'd say this men's national team definitely, I would say, has solid experience on turf, right? Like, and I know that
I'd have to actually think back to games, but there's a handful I can think of. There's 2 away games. One's 2021 Haiti. They beat Haiti 1-0 on some pretty bad turf. I don't know if you remember that. And then you have 2-0 Curacao last year. Nations League was also on turf, if I'm not mistaken. And Canada ended up winning that. And then, of course, at home, you've got 4-0 over Curacao at BC Place. That was also on turf. You got Commonwealth when they beat Costa Rica and Mexico in a week, both on turf. Tim Hortons Field, another one, 2-0 on turf. So those all the ones I can think of off the top of my head are all wins on turf for Canada.
Wins? Okay, yeah. I was just focusing on some of the places that we played. Yes, all wins on turf. So there you go. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think I saw Cloak put out a tweet that said it was 37. Do you see that same one?
Or it feels like 37. I think it was
feels like 37.
I mean, I guess it's probably, let's see what I'm gonna have to get Paramaribo Suriname. What a name. And what a place. Like, you look how far it is, right? Like, they're literally it's like a CONMEBOL away day. Yeah, it's 30 degrees right now. It's going to drop to around 28 at kickoff. But as we know, the humidity is 71% right now. So the feels might creep up into the mid 30s.
That's going to be a difficult one. But we got a prediction coming in from Robert that says 3-1 Canada. Alex is going 2-0. I'm going 1-0. Let us know in the comment section what you guys think about tonight. So, Alex, let's touch a little bit, because we were in Calgary. So I had a couple of messages from some of you guys saying, like, why aren't you and Alex live? Like, the roster dropped. We were very busy, so we weren't able to do it. So we haven't really talked about the roster, Alex. I mean, you and I have off camera, but not really, on camera with all the viewers here. So let's kind of dive into the roster that was released. I'm going to focus on some of the names first that will not be a part of this camp. 3 bigger names. Liam Miller, unfortunately, had a season-ending injury, so he will be spending some time on the sidelines. Bit of a loss there. We have a player like Nathan Saliba. I think, Alex, you might have mentioned he may, some way, shape, or form, end up in this camp. I'll let you touch on that in a sec, maybe for the second leg. And then the 2 big ones, we have Derek Cornelius and Alphonso Davies, both dropping out due to injury, or with Davies, maybe just not. I don't know. I saw a few reports on that, Alex, that kind of said he was somewhat given the option I don't know if you were reading any of those articles that were dropping out of Germany, but it seemed like he might have had a bit of a choice, but it was more precautionary to stay out. What were you reading on the Davies front?
For Davies, it's like a mix. Fatigue definitely sounds like the one. I think that's the one that his agent put out, Nick Jose. So I think that's fatigue's a fair line. You have to imagine there's some sort of knock. I mean, at this time of the season, everyone has knocks, and you have to remember for a guy like Davies, he's played like something like 8 or 9. He started of like 8 or 9 in a row for Bayern, and like he's gone all in 90 in almost all of them. They've been Champions League, they've been in DFB Pokal, they've been in the Bundesliga, then to travel all the way to Florida, down to Suriname, up to Toronto, back to Germany. That's also a huge grind for a lot of guys. So I think that makes sense for Davies that, ultimately, I imagine with that, there's a sports science decision where they track guys' fitness loads, and they're probably looking at him. He didn't have the summer off, right? He played a lot of 90s for Canada deep into Copa America. I imagine he just ended up coming up as a bit of a caution there. And I wonder if we see some other guys get hit by that, because Jesse Marsh mentioned, which I thought was interesting, someone asked him about Nathan Saliba, and he's like, oh, look, like I loved Nathan. He was great during this camp. It's just, we decided not to bring him to Suriname yesterday in his pre-match press conference. He elaborated saying he really focused on experience in this camp. Like he said, every player he's brought in has at least been to one camp. That was intentional. Saliba, of course, has been to multiple camps, but since he's based in Montreal, I do wonder if, depending on how leg one goes, all of a sudden a few more guys in Europe who've been playing a lot lately, they all head home, and then all of a sudden that opens up the door for some of those guys like a Saliba who doesn't have to travel much to get to Toronto to step in.
True. Yeah, it's I don't know. I've seen once the fatigue was mentioned on X, it was some supporters that are messaging, saying it's not a great look. So I don't know, Alex, if you want to touch on that. But I find the interesting thing is last time in the quarterfinals in Nations League, we lost. So it's not like these two games are a couple friendlies, throwaways. But I don't know. I feel deep down like if Alphonso Davies could be here, he would. I don't think he's ever shown in the past that he's the type of player to miss out, whether it's a friendly or not. So I know, and who knows if there's any loss in translation, Alex, but like, because I was the fatigue thing that I kept seeing online that were upsetting a few people, but I personally think, that it's a knock as well. Like he would be there if he could, and clearly he's not for some reason. Do you think that's probably fair?
Yeah, I think it's poorly worded in the sense, and poorly worded and lost in translation, because I think it's something where fatigue in like a German or from a European perspective means different from fatigue, right? Like here we almost associate it with like, you see fatigue and you're like, oh, it just doesn't hit the same. Whereas like in fatigue, maybe from a European perspective, it's important. It's about management. It's about preload, prehab, and all that. So that's why I think if you're rewarding it from a North American perspective, you go knock.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, like Davies, that's why I'd say what I'd push back is Davies played all 3 friendlies. If you wanted to miss out on games, if you want to skip out, pretty easy to skip some friendlies, overseas, save yourself the travel. He flew for the friendlies. Like this guy he's a guy who's played, against Cayman Islands, Arubas, Bermudas. He's always been there on the pitch. Unless he's physically not been able to, he's always been one to accept the call. So I think it's something where, in this case, there was something that came up. They sat down with the doctors. They sat down with Canada. You probably have to remember Jesse Marsh is probably sitting there like, look, Fonzie, I know you want to come. I know you want to, put on the shirt, but almost for his sake, like, don't need to push you. I'd rather have you fully fit in March versus maybe he gets injured now and it becomes a long-term thing, throws off his season, loses his starting spot. I think we have to remember all those factors. And yeah, sometimes we read fatigue and alarm bells go off. But I think Davies is the one guy you don't have to question his commitment in that regard.
Well said, Alex. I like there's a dark little hole there that you're getting down that, what could have been, but I agree. And I just wanted to come out there and explain that a little bit as well. And Alex did a good job. I think there was a loss of translation there. And I think if he could be here, he would be here. And Albert says all the reports on his contract coming out in the last couple of days, possible connection. I don't think it's got anything to do with his contract. I think it, as Alex said, it's a knock. That's if it said in that tweet knock instead of fatigue, I guarantee that those type of statements wouldn't even be coming up. But I am going to do a quick little transition here into you talked about contract transfer news. Alex, I don't know if you saw this from earlier today, but
the Real Madrid stuff.
no, actually,
Bayern. I saw a bunch of Real Madrid stuff today. There you go.
No, so you mentioned
I
Jonathan
saw
David?
the Jonathan David. I thought you were talking Alphonso. Yeah, I saw the Alphonso Davies Real Madrid, Jonathan David Bayern. Ironic, huh?
Yeah, ironic. So there's a couple stories you and I can touch on just very quickly before we move along, and let us know in the comments where you'd maybe like to see Davies or David end up playing next season. I was busy for the last hour and a bit, so I actually wasn't on X. So this is actually the first time I'm seeing it. I went to share our One Soccer tweet that said that we were streaming, and this caught my eyes. So I'm going to read it now because I haven't actually read it yet. So it's Bayern have Jonathan David on their list and are closely monitoring his situation. Bayern are also aware of the 24-year-old striker plans. What makes him particularly interesting is that Davies' contract with Lille runs only until 2025, meaning he is very likely to become available as a free agent next summer. Interesting. And it mentions Davies in there. He's a close friend, but mentions Davies. But then you said, Alex, he's got the Real Madrid links, but doesn't mean anything quite yet. I would say Jonathan David and everything he's doing in Europe this season. I mean, I don't think it's out of the ordinary that a team like Bayern could be a realistic shot. Now, someone like Harry Kane is there. Alex, does a team like Bayern interest you for David? Do you like the fact that he'd be going up against a Harry Kane? Do you think there's a way that those two could play together? What do you think of the link, and do you like the fit?
I could see them playing together. I mean, it's not like, Jonathan David hasn't shown he can play as a 10 underneath the striker, and Kane loves to drop so much anyways. They're kind of similar in that way. Maybe perhaps they'd get in each other's way a bit, but, they could work out. And Kane is getting a bit older, 33, I think he is now. There have been some fitness concerns with him. Maybe long-term Bayern's looking at a soon-to-be 25-year-old David and thinking build around him. And I just would say, if you're Jonathan David, this could be a smart double coup in the sense that you could get yourself one of the top strikers on the market, funny enough, stylistically similar to Kane if they were to replace him, or maybe he ends up being complementary to Kane. But also talk about the negotiation tactic in terms of like, you're trying to convince Alphonso Davies to stay and not leave on a free. Bringing in Jonathan David on a free could be a pretty good negotiation tactic to keep him around. So I could see it making sense from Bayern's perspective, because from Jonathan David's look, I mean, no kidding, when a Bayern Munich calls, you pick up the phone in terms of that level of club. And right now with how Jonathan David is playing, that's the caliber of club that should be interested. Really, if there's any team in the world that needs a striker or is even considering replacing a striker, or even just wants another striker to pair with another striker, Jonathan David clicks all those boxes. So, makes sense.
I agree, and he has been linked to Barcelona as well. And this comment said Lewandowski is 35. I see him playing at Barca too. I think that could make sense. I'm torn a little bit, and it's hard to know because there's been a ton of reports coming out about David. I mean, there's been a ton over the past 4 years, let alone the amount that has been coming out ever since he's really been thriving this season. He's scoring in big moments. He's scoring against big teams. He's doing it in the Champions League. He's a free agent. He's young. He's exciting. He's consistent. He's got a great goal scoring record in a top 5 league. Like he hits a lot of the boxes. So each year, I kind of always ask myself, Alex, is this, did he miss a moment? Basically, like I really felt like last summer he should have went. Even the summer before that, I thought there was a good chance. There were some big clubs that had holes in the striker position, waiting for dominoes to fall. They never really did, and I don't know. And I'm like, well, can he do it again? Because if he missed that opportunity, he has to continue. And right now, I think he's probably the best positioned he could have possibly been. The fact that he's a free agent is one big thing, but I think these goals in the Champions League, Alex, is just getting attention. I mean, every tweet that I've seen you share on X has blown up in the Champions League because, I don't know, people are just so excited watching his goals and seeing him score against these big teams in big moments. So I like it. I'm not going to really Bayern, Barca, like, I don't know. I don't know exactly where I want him to go yet. I kind of like the idea of him not having like a huge goal scoring threat in front of him, like Lewandowski or a Kane, maybe like in a dual striker system. Like if Juve tweaked a little bit and maybe he played under Vlahovic, I kind of like that idea. We know that he's always had statements about wanting to go to the Premier League, right? Like there could be some openings there, although I don't know exactly what fit, but regardless, if he keeps doing what he's doing this summer, he's going to find a big club. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember that a few years ago, David was unproven in the sense that we knew he was a top striker, but we didn't know he was world class. Because I think, honestly, after how the last 24 months has gone, I think it's safe to say he's world class. Canada has two world class players on their men's national team, Davies and now David. And I think why David is world class is because he's been at Lille for 5 seasons now. He's had like 3 to 4 different coaches. He's had different strike partners, different teammates. The league around him has changed. Yet one constant, even in the first year, he struggled massively for half of it, but then he got hot and scored close to double digits, if not double digits. In the second year, he got double digits. Third year, double digits. Totals kept going up each year. Last year, he had a real breakout season. Now he's been phenomenal. That's the sign of a world-class player. And maybe, earlier summers when he had a big season with players, you always want them to capitalize on that, right? Because football is short. There can be ebbs and flows. You've seen it with guys who have breakout years in MLS, don't move. And then there's what ifs, right? I always will think of like a Mark Anthony Kaye, like when he had those Sheffield United links after that dominant season he had with LAFC, but then never came together. And then he ended up in MLS, and eventually, you kind of wonder what he could have become if he'd made that move. But I think what you realize with a guy like Jonathan David and why he's world class is that it doesn't maybe matter the environment as much. He's going to do his thing. He's going to score. And then you realize, okay, while it would have been nice to see him move in a few years back, he didn't. Now he's positioned himself as a world-class player, as a free agent. He can have a pick of anywhere he wants to go, and I have full confidence that he's going to thrive. So I just want to say shout out to Jonathan David for proving that, because I think that's where sometimes the hysteria, the rush to wanting to see a player transfer, and I mean, we're not going to say we're guilty of it because it's a real phenomenon, but I think that's where it comes from. But it takes players to prove that they're of a certain quality, and I think David's done that.
Absolutely, which is why this summer, now I feel like there's no doubt he's going to end up at a big club. Being a free agent does help with that feeling. But regardless, last little shout out here to Jonathan David. Right now, in all competitions, goals scored in his career at Ghent and as well as Lille, he's got 134 goals in 285 appearances. And for Canada, 30 goals in 57 appearances. So international club. The man knows how to find the back of the net. So
and that's not even counting assists. That's the one thing with David, because 0.5 goals per game isn't bad, right? But when you add in the assist too, that's when you're okay, that's the part of the package.
And watching his game adapt a little bit to become that number 10 playmaker. But anyways, Alex, so we will move on. We got a little sidetracked there, but I think I'm gonna go rewind a little bit. So the 4 names I highlighted that were missing was Liam Miller, Nathan Saliba, Derek Cornelius, Alphonso Davies. The big two, Liam Miller is a big loss as well, but I mean, a like-for-like replacement. You have Jacob Schaffelberg. If Liam Miller was healthy, we'd have the debate who's going to be starting down the left-hand side, plus Tajon Buchanan's back. It really sucks for Liam, especially because how serious the injury was, and we wish him a quick recovery. But in terms of players where it's not as easy to replace, you have a Derek Cornelius who has developed a fantastic relationship with Moise Bombito, who just got a phenomenal FIFA card. If you guys want to check that out, I'll share it for you guys here in a sec. And then Alphonso Davies, who has become our go-to left back. So I want to start there, Alex, quickly. I think it's fair to say that in our 4-4-2 system with Alphonso Davies out, it's going to be Richie Laryea or Sam Adekubi, right? Sam Adekubi missed out as originally being called in, but is there a real shot that he could be the guy that just immediately goes from not even being called up right into the starting 11? He's been playing for the Whitecaps. He's in good form. He's a lefty. I'm not crazy about Laryea on the left-hand side. I think he's had his moments, but I mean, I think it's going to be Laryea, although I feel a little more comfortable with Adekubi. What are you feeling?
Yeah, well, it's good you asked me, because I was having this debate with a few people yesterday and this morning, because when I put on my Jesse Marsh hat and build a projected 11, I think it's Laryea, in the sense that you go familiarity. I think Larea's even had some stints at left back in the rare moments we've seen Davies come off the field, whereas Adekubi hasn't played yet at all under Jesse Marsh, not even a single minute. But then I think if I take off my Jesse Marsh hat and I just look at it in terms of form, Adekubi's in great form. He's fit. Look at fit in terms of replacing Davies, a left-sided player. He can, if you want him to fill exactly what Davies is doing, Adekubi can do that. You also add on other factors if you want. He can also play as a bit more of a left center back, maybe give you a bit more tactical flexibility in possession. So I think Adekubi deserves to start. I think the big question is, just considering Jesse Marsh hasn't put him on the field at all, will he be willing to drop him and start him? We'll find out. I would think so, just because Sam Adekubi's a reliable player. You've seen it under different managers, but I think in terms of predicting what I'm going to see, that's why I just see Larea, and maybe you see Adekubi get a 30, 45, and then start it is always a big ask to drop someone right into a competitive game.
Yeah, and that's what, because I put out my predicted starting 11 on X, and I got a lot of comments, and I was a little surprised by it. And I just had to clarify. I'm like, guys, this is what I think's going to happen, but they were basically all just saying Sam over Richie, and I'm like, that's fair. I absolutely don't disagree. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it will be Richie starting. Richie's played honestly really well under Jesse. So, but let's have some fun here, Alex. We'll see if it's gonna end up being. We're gonna build the starting 11 right now. We'll see if it's similar to the one that I built or you built as well. I think I have a feeling that it will be. But first, here are the two FIFA cards that were released. You have Bombito with that 94 base, 80 defending, 84 physicals, and then Davies with his 97, 78 defending. A little low, I'd say, on an 87 card, and an 82 physical. That'd be quite the hybrid pair at the back you could have there. That is a rapid, Alex.
Yeah, that is 94 pace center back, man. Makes me want to get just the game for that. So hopefully if I do get the game in the next week or so, that Bombito is still cheap, because man, I just need that at the back to build around.
I've been asking Alex if he's downloaded it yet, and he's like, no, he's staying away. And you know
this
what, Alex?
Bombito will be the one that does it for me.
Yeah, but at the same time, I just got wrecked a little bit in Rivals, so maybe I need to take a break myself. When I came back and played on Monday after our little day off, and I don't know. Once you lose 2-3 in a row, you start questioning why you're even here. So anyways, all right, let's get up our Share My Tactics. Shout out to this website, which is phenomenal. This is the last team that you and I put together. So we'll just go through it, and if we have any changes, we'll talk about them, because there will be a few changes from this last one that we did. So let's start between the sticks. We got Maxime Crepeau, Dane St. Clair. A lot of people seem to think that it is open. I would be shocked, really, if it's not Crepeau. I think both keepers are solid. I would feel comfortable with both, but just in terms of putting myself in Jesse's shoes, I just feel like it's going to be Crepeau, and I don't know. Alex, try to talk me out of it. In terms of reality, do you really think that Dane St. Clair is going to start, or do you believe it's going to be Crepeau the same way I do?
See, funnily enough, I will talk you into why it should be St. Clair, and I'll clarify my stance by saying I think right now Crepeau or St. Clair, it's a true 50-50. It's one of those where either or could start. I feel comfortable, right? There's not a matter of one being miles ahead or anything like that. But for Dane St. Clair, there's two things that work in his favor. Three, let's go three. First one, form. He's in great form. He's been playing in the playoffs. He's been dominating in the playoffs. He's a confident player. You always want that on your national team. Crepeau, I think he hadn't played since he last played for Canada, because he didn't play for Portland, and he has something like 2 games since the start of October. That's, you always wonder for a goalie, are your reflexes a bit off? Even in that Panama game, he had a bit of a shaky game by his high standards. So you kind of wonder. A second one is fit, because what we have noted, and this will be something I bring up when it comes to other positions, Jesse Marsh is kind of based on the fit of the opponent you're going against and how the game might play out. He's made some tweaks that I found really interesting. And one of them is that, Dane St. Clair, we've seen him start in games where I think Jesse Marsh realizes they might not hold as much possession. Netherlands is one of them where he gets a start. Canada's playing with a bit more of a low block. Uruguay, maybe another one. That one was also a third place game. Mexico was one where, Canada was playing a little bit lower. This Suriname team holds a lot of the ball. They average something like 55% possession under their new coach. Jesse Marsh loves to hit on transition. He'll want to sit back. That favors a St. Clair. What we've seen with Crepeau is you see he really thrives in that high line when he's properly, right up there. And I don't know how much Canada will be pressing with the heat and with how Suriname holds onto the ball. So fit's actually the second one for St. Clair. And the third one is just the timing. If St. Clair deserves a shot, I'd rather see him get in leg one. Why? Because if he struggles, then you go back to Crepeau in leg two, and he's confident, he'll do the job, he's ready. And if St. Clair's so phenomenal, then you keep him in for leg two. Whereas if you bring in Crepeau leg one and he's rusty, you're left with a tough decision of, do you bounce back with Crepeau and hope he finds his form if he struggles, or do you go to a St. Clair you don't really trust? I'd say I'd rather go for a St. Clair in leg one, purely because it offers you a bit more flexibility heading into leg two.
We are in that interesting territory where MLS is, like, at least for a lot of clubs, is over. So when these windows come up, you have players that are not playing. That could have been a nice debate between Jacob Schaffelberg and Liam Miller if Liam was healthy. So that's a good point, Alex. And I don't disagree with any of your points. I just think that it comes down to, I think Jesse trusts Crepeau, and I think that he's going to stick with it just because when Crepeau has played for Canada, he hasn't really put in a wrong foot. However, I will say it has always kind of felt like the Dane St. Clair door is not as closed. It's not like he came in, picked Max, and then that was it. If you look at the Netherlands and France window where he split those, and then even in Copa America for our important game for third place, he started Dane St. Clair. So he split the games in September, and in October he seemed to be very close to picking one or the other, and he picked Crepeau ultimately against Panama. They held a bit more of the ball, they played a higher line. I think he mentioned stylistic fit was the reason why I picked Crepeau, so that's why I'm leaning St. Clair, because had I not seen that, I probably would have leaned Crepeau. But the fact that Marsh is already like that, for him it's so close that he's debating little things like stylistic fit, seems to indicate for St. Clair could work in this game. Yeah, and maybe that point was against myself, but yeah, it does seem like it's close. Like it really never felt like it felt like in the moment it was going to be Crepeau, and he's performed well, so he's kind of kept it. But even like, I think the wrong decision was to start Dane St. Clair in that Copa America third place game. In my opinion, I think Crepeau should have kept that opportunity because he's been phenomenal throughout. In my opinion, damn near keeper of the tournament. But Jesse trusts Dane just as much and wants to give him a chance. So maybe this is it. Maybe this is, from what we've seen and the form you just mentioned and what he's been doing in the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see. But if I had to put money in, I'd still lean Crepeau. But for this, we'll have some fun and we'll throw Dane in because I would like to see it. I do want to quickly backtrack, Alex, because you were talking possession, and I had a nice little conversation with the Suriname fan as well. And they were pretty torn about how they think Suriname's going to tackle this match, because like you mentioned, they are possession based. They love having the ball. They have some creative players. They were just like, the fan I was talking to was worried that Suriname would show too much respect to Canada and allow us to have the ball. I said I could see us having anywhere maybe between like 55%. I could also see it be like a 50-50 type of game. I don't think Canada will just hand Suriname the ball all match long. So they're completely dominating possession. It is going to be hot. I agree with your point about the press. I honestly could see like possession being about 50-50, but I'm just curious to see what your take is. Do you think that Suriname could actually have a little bit more of the ball? Do you think Canada will have slightly more? Do you think it'll come in waves? What's your thought there in possession? Because that was a talking point I had with this guy.
Yeah, ultimately, I'd say it's too hard to answer because it's also fluid, right? Like, I think if Canada gets a goal within the first 10 minutes, they're going to hold like 30-40 of the ball. And why not? Like, you score first, don't overexert yourself, don't get tired, don't open up the game. But say if Suriname scores first, okay, Canada's going to maybe hold a bit of the ball. They're going to need to. Then as the game wears on, if it's a 0-0, then I'd also probably give the edge to Suriname. So I'd still answer Suriname, but we always can't forget with game state, temperature, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And it can be a very fluid stat. And even then, we'll see, because we have to remember possession isn't like who holds the ball the longest. It's who makes the most passes. And as we've seen with Canada, they really want to play direct of, 3-4 passes and get in behind. I think against this Suriname backline, that's one area of weakness I've kind of seen in this team. That defensive midfield backline isn't the strongest for Suriname. I think Canada will want to target direct and quick with guys like Schaffelberg and David really getting targeted in that regard.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, there's been games that, Alex, I know you and I have been on here. We've called basically possession just because it kind of seemed that's how the game was going. But certain things can always throw it off. Early reds, early goals, like you mentioned. And yeah, I was just going. I'd still say 50-50, like ish. I think just depending on how the game goes, there'll be moments, there'll be waves. And yeah, looking at that Suriname team, in my opinion, it's not like I'm crazy familiar with every player, but I'd say their biggest weakness would be their two holding midfielders in that 4-2-3-1. So definitely an opportunity there for Canada to exploit. But we move on. I just want to get your quick thought on that. So let's make this starting 11 pretty quickly, Alex, and let's get into some of the comments because there are some other suggestions here. So guys, put in your starting 11s. We'll get to the questions right after we build ours very quickly. Won't waste too much time. So Alex, I will put Dane in net just to have some fun. You went on a nice little, or you gave some nice little points there. So we'll put Dane in net. Now backline, I'm going to say this is what I think. I think it's going to be Johnston, Bumpito, Waterman, Larea. Do you want to go with that? Do you think it's going to be that? Do you want to go with maybe like an Atakubi instead, just in terms of form? How do you see this back line shaping up?
Well, if I'm going to go with the similar argument I had earlier with Dane Sinclair, I say keep an eye out for Kamal Miller. And why do I say that is that, funnily, like again, Jesse Marsh's little subtle things like this, I didn't notice it till I looked it up. But Waterman has gotten minutes recently. He got minutes in the U.S. game, in the Panama game, games where Canada held a little more of the ball, played a higher line. So he ends up, but then Miller ended up playing in the Mexico game. So I wonder if, if something stylistically, where Kamal Miller might be more, favored for a matchup like this on the road, whereas a Waterman might be more favored if Canada were playing high press, high line, which could be very well the case in second leg. So I do wonder if it could be something like a Miller first leg, Waterman second leg kind of scenario.
All right, so you like the Larea though at left back instead of Sam?
I think if we're predicting it from Marsh's perspective, I mean, we outlined why, right? I think Larea, it makes sense. Although I think Atakubi fully deserves to start, and I think I would put him in if I were given the choice myself.
Okay, we'll go Richie for now, just because we both kind of made those points on when we were talking to people, so we'll stick by it. But I was torn as well with Liam, or with not Liam, Kamal and Waterman. I like that. I like that Miller's got a little bit of pace, and he is a lefty. I was just kind of thinking that it didn't look like Marsh overly fancied him, but you made some good points as well. And I think that one's truly 50-50 as well. I don't think the Larea Atakubi one is 50-50. I'd be comfortable either way, but I do think it's going to be Larea. And that's what we'll go with. Midfield, I think pretty much writes itself. Well, I'm going to go Ahmed on the right. I just don't think Tejan's ready to start. Kone, Eustachio, Schaffelberg. So, and then David Laird up front.
I think that the rest of it's pretty bang on. I mean, the rest of the stuff is all, if Jesse Marsh has a surprise, like if he really wants to go Eustachio, Chouanier, Kone, would never be mad at that, but we'll see if that ends up being the case. I think the two wings will be locked in. Look, Buchanan hasn't played at all since his injury, 0. So to go start on turf in Suriname after all the travel and the heat, first game back, like, no, that's just like that's just risky at that point. That's, that's what are you doing here? So I think we'll see Buchanan. We'll see him get 20 off the bench, 20, maybe 30. But Ahmed, Schaffelberg definitely feel like they're in. But you always do wonder, because what I did throw out there was that I really feel that if Kone was fit for any of the friendlies, we would have seen Kone, Eustachio, Chouanier. And it's really too bad Kone was, because it kind of threw Jesse Marsh off in that regard. And he went Eustachio, Chouanier and kind of stuck with that. But you kind of do wonder if he flirts with that midfield idea, because it's going to, would give Canada a bit more muscle. Suriname does play a 3 in the middle. You can always, match up in that regard. Because, part of the reason you didn't see that 3 in Copa America is because Chouanier wasn't really tested. Now he has been tested. Now he has been proven. And the midfield depth is only getting better with the Saliba. I know we have a comment here for Seager. It's only a matter of time for a guy like Seager before he's in the rotation more. To his point, I mean, I don't think his first start's going to be an away leg in Suriname. I'd really love to see him start at BMO on Tuesday. But that's why I do wonder midfield long term if we start to see the 4-2-3-1 come out a bit more with the options that are starting to present themselves.
So here's a question for Seager, Alex. When he does get his first start, this is you don't know this answer, but I'm curious to see what you think. When he does get his first start, whenever it may be, could be a few months from now, could be a year from now. Do you think he'll start as a right back or a CDM?
I would think CDM.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Johnston, you're not displacing him now with that form he's had for,
No,
for
you're not.
Celtics. And I want to see Seager in the heart of the midfield. Every time I've seen him play, he has the attributes to be a dominant central midfielder, both technically, both physically. I'd love to see him in there and give Canada that true six that will allow guys like Eustachio, Kone, Chouanier, Saliba, all these profiles they have to play with more freedom, no matter who it ends up being. So yeah, we'll see. What ends up happening there with Seager. I think leg 2 would make a lot of sense, right? Home potentially, if they can get a bit of an advantage in this one, it would be great to see Seager get a start very soon before the end of the year.
I'd be excited for it. The one appearance he has for Canada, he did play as a right back. That it makes sense in the situation. But I like your points, Alex, and I agree. I want to see him there easily, because then if you have your Seager, Eustachio, and then Kone as a 10, like a 4-2-3-1, maybe you have to sacrifice a Larin. Or you just go with 4-3-3. I don't know. We'll see. But I definitely like to see him in the midfield. That's the number one reason I think everyone was so excited that he committed to Canada's, because we were desperate in that position, and we got a talented young player there. But let us know, guys, what your thoughts are. This is Alex and myself's predicted starting 11 for the game tonight. I'll go through it quickly and then go through some comments here. We are going with the 4-4-2. Alex gave a nice little opinion piece on why Dane deserves to start. I'm not going to argue with him, so I like it, and I do kind of hope he does start. I'm leaning still, if you're asking me, in the starting 11 I put out. I did think it's going to be Crepeau, but I liked Alex's points. So we have Dane in net, Johnson at right back, Bombito. I had Waterman in mind. Alex has Miller. I think that could go either way, and I don't hate the shout as well. We both have Larea at left back, Eustachio, Kone, Ahmed, Schaffelberg, David, and Larin. All pretty similar. That wasn't the difficult part. So let's see what you guys are saying as well. We have a predicted starting 11 here. Oh, and you went with Dane as well. So there you go. So Dane, Johnson, Bombito, Miller, Atakubi coming in. Again, I don't hate it. Eustachio, Kone, Larea at right wing.
So no Ahmed in this Ahmed one. It's Ahmed for Atakubi, and then just a bit of a switch. Which, yeah, I mean, you do wonder if the Larea at right wing could be a shout, or at wing. Maybe it's something where you see with Schaffelberg's fitness, you see an Ahmed Larea as the two wingers. Could also be an option with, one of them playing on the left. Probably Ahmed has a bit more familiarity in that role. Just because you wonder with Schaffelberg's fitness, whereas Larea has proven before that, even if he's not fully fit, he can still give you a good run. And then that allows you to bring Schaffelberg for the last 30, which could be very useful in this kind of game. So I don't hate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Larea is going to be on the pitch. So, it could be left back. It could be right mid, left mid. I have a feeling he's going to be on the pitch, but I am leaning a little bit more towards left back. We have another predicted starting 11 here. Crepeau, Johnson, Bombito, Miller, Atakubi, Schaffelberg, Eustachio, Kone, Ahmed, David Larin. So, again, the question marks are the one where there's a little debate. A lot of Sam shouts in here. Crepeau over Dane over Crepeau. We'll see something along the lines here. I would love to see Knight, LaBelle, Seager, and Bear get some decent minutes. The only thing I would say before this camp is, because it's two competitive matches, quarterfinals, we were bounced out of this competition last time in the quarters. I don't see Knight, LaBelle, for example, getting any minutes. I see Seager and Bear, if they come off, probably 80 plus. Maybe that's a little harsh, Alex. I don't know what you're thinking, but I don't think that this will be the type of legs where we're going to see kind of those bubble players, or players that you're kind of excited to see. Like if Saliba was in here, I know he's maybe Saliba. I mean, Saliba has had some decent minutes under Jesse, but I still think he would be towards the end of the game. What do you think, Alex? Yeah,
honestly, I'm going to disagree with you, because I think it's not fair to compare this year to last year, because think of how different last year was. First off, interim coach, right? No clear idea of what the next coach is going to be. It felt like it was so far away, right? It was Biello, and you're just kind of like, who's next? Are they going to even, be able to afford a new manager, etc., right? So it's changed so much in that regard. There weren't any friendlies played up. Well, there was the one in Japan where they got smacked, and that was all they were able to play in the 2 windows before, whereas this time they got the 3 friendlies. They're coming off Copa America, etc. I think they head into this tie. And plus, there's more of a clear gap between them and Suriname than there was between them and Jamaica, because Jamaica is a good team. You saw it again yesterday, where the U.S., quite frankly, the U.S. deserved the 1-0 win, but also the U.S. were lucky it was a 1-0 win, because Jamaica missed a penalty. I don't know. Damari Gray, this guy must hate Canada. He was unreal against Canada last year. in that second leg, and then this one he misses a penalty and got yanked at halftime. But like Jamaica had more shots. They were all over the US. It could have very well been a 1-1 game. That's whereas I think Canada Suriname, there's more of a gap. And then you look at all those factors, like, yeah, if Canada's up 2-0 in this first leg, or in the second leg they're up a couple goals, 100% I could see Knight Labelle coming on to cap time, because of course he must have impressed last camp to earn that opportunity, no doubt. But Marsha's also probably looking at it from okay, there's an opportunity to really lock this kid up long term. I like him. Let's do it. Because if not, I think Marsh would have called up someone else, like a Saliba, like one of those other guys for experience.
I mean, it's a fair point, and maybe I'm stuck a little bit on Copa America without remembering that Jesse Marsh came in, for that major tournament right there. So, well, I mean, he had the 2 friendlies.
He also experimented in the Uruguay game, and not comparing the Uruguay game to this, but say it's the 70th minute of leg 2 and they're up 4-1. Would that not be a similar scenario where you throw in a Knight Labelle the same way he trusted a Diffuser role against Uruguay?
And that's what I think I was getting stuck a little bit on, is because I'm looking back at those first 4 or 5 games of it. They were pretty standard substitutions. If Schaffelberg didn't start, it was Miller that came on. Ahmed would come on. Tanny would come on. Kone would start. And if it wasn't Kone,
remember, Tanny didn't have a cap before Jesse Marsh came in, and immediately Jesse Marsh trusted him, right? In theory, now we're so used to seeing him that it feels like he's established, but he really wasn't. Yeah. He was barely into his first full season in MLS, right?
Yeah, and Diffuser started and went 67 minutes. So you know what? Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know. I just, yeah. I get what you're saying, and I could definitely be wrong here. And I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn. I'm still I'll stick with what I said. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
No, it's valid. I just would say
no. You're making a good point.
It was like, say, don't be scarred by what happened last year, just because I think last year's very different from this year. That's what I would say.
I agree, but I'm definitely scarred. That was very
rough.
Very annoying way to go out.
And even to like Robert's point here, because he's talking about Canada was up comfortably. Like, I don't think anyone's going to be doing keepy ups in the goal if Canada's up this time under Jesse Marsh. So that's another thing.
I shared a phenomenal tweet with it. I was right beside Alex when I tweeted it and said it was the highlights of Borjan's match against Al Nassr, where he stopped Ronaldo 3 times, was man of the match. It got a decent amount of traction. Like, a lot of people were liking it and sharing it, but every comment said, how many keepy ups? Where's the stats for how many keepy ups he did? So Canadian fans did not forget that collapse. And yeah, I thought it was a funny story, but yeah, we'll see. It all depends on how the game goes, Alex. I agree. If we're up 2-0 later in the game, maybe we do see Knight Labelle, like you said. I guess my point was, I'm hoping we get through this comfortably, these 2 games, like professionally, comfortably, good performances throughout. If that means we see Knight Labelle even in the 90th minute, so be it. That'd be a great way to cap time. But I guess that was my kind of point. But maybe
last point on Knight Labelle, where I'd even again, why I'm sure Marsh is thinking about it. Knight Labelle would have had a match tomorrow, because in League 2 they don't have international breaks, right? Because it's only like championship up or something that they do. So the fact that, again, Jesse Marsh called him in, he's missing a game with his club. It's always tough to do for a youngster. Another reason why I think we'll see Knight Labelle, even if it's a 2-minute, 5-minute, just to cap time, of course, assuming the scenario is right.
I like it. Hey, I like it. We will see, and I hope it happens. A good opportunity for a young player to get cap tied. Why not? So let's wait and see. Bear is an interesting one. I just think it's difficult when it comes to the strikers, because, and Alex, feel free to if you disagree. I do like your point on Knight Labelle, and I'll say for Theo Bear, he's behind Tanny, and you basically need to see Laren and David sacrificed. One of them you have the opportunity to maybe bring on like a Jonathan Osorio, or maybe now a Junior Hoylett. You still have Tanny, who, in my opinion, and has been proven to be our 3rd striker up. So I think Theo Bear is on it. Maybe Alex, here's a question for you. Who's got more of an opportunity to feature tonight? Knight Labelle or Theo Bear?
That's a good,
because you made a bunch of great points for Knight Labelle that I could see. But I think Theo Bear's had his opportunities, and he's not. I don't know. Because I could see maybe Junior Hoylett, like I just said, or Osorio coming on along with Tanny to replace Laren David, for example. Before I could see like a Tanny and Bear.
I'll have to go Knight LaBelle purely because I mean, hey, I predicted a 2-0, so I'm clearly I got a level of confidence in this game, and I think at a 2-0 we see a Knight LaBelle. Yeah, that's a good question for Bear. That there is a lot of logjam for him to work through. I mean, I'd love to see him get more of an opportunity because he's always dangerous with when he's been on for Canada. You saw it in Panama, right? He almost scored that header right after coming on. He helped create space, and that eventually it led to Canada's late winner in that game against Panama. But it is, there's always a logjam there of if it's Laird and David are starting. You mentioned it, right? Like, Tani Oluwaseyi can come in and stretch the field. You got Hoylett can come in. You got a lot of options. Azorio. You got Buchanan that could come in and maybe move guys around. Like there's a lot of different options. So we'll see if we see Bear at all. But I would like to see him pick up a bit of a more prominent super sub role because I think there could be some value to it. But it's just kind of figuring out where that is, right? And for now, we haven't really seen that much of it, but I think the Panama game offered some good encouragement, and it gives me, a reason to see why that's trending towards working.
I agree. This is gonna be a throwback. I don't know how many Canadian fans, if there's a lot of new ones, or if the older ones were back on YouTube back then or X. But Logan says, I think Suriname fans did well eating their humble pie. I don't see the going to smash Canada comments. So when I did a preview. I mean, this would have been when we played Suriname, Alex, in the very last game of the first round of World Cup qualifying. And passionate fan base, I will have to say that. So the Suriname fans are incredible. A lot of them reached out to me back then. A lot of them are reaching out to me now. Very, very friendly. But yeah, I got a lot of those. It was right back when Canada was beginning their upward trajectory. But going to smash Canada, you guys are going to lose. We're going to run you guys over. That was pretty much the only comments I was getting on that interview or on that preview I did. This time they're a lot nicer, and honestly, a lot of them are saying that Canada will probably win, but they're saying it's going to be a good match. So I just
they support their team, man. We love that.
They do, and in their defense, if they're not paying a ton of attention, they might not have known what Canada was going to become at that point, because that was the very last game of first round of World Cup qualifying. So that's a long time ago. And if you remember that, Alex, we didn't start out overly well in that game. They had a couple big chances.
Oh, they hit the bar. I remember early. It was a tough game.
It was a tough game. But anyways, they were great back then. They're great now. They're a passionate fan base. I do really like it. So we'll go over here. Why do you guys think we fall in love with these older, lower ceiling type of players like Choinière, Larea, Atakubi, especially when we have more promising players waiting to get their chances? I'll go first. I wouldn't say we're falling in love with these players. I mean, Larea and Atakubi, I believe, are both 29.
Yeah, they're low on the older side.
Choinière is 27, I think. These are good players for Canada. They're depth pieces. In a game like this, for example, I don't know who you would go with, and if you're not going to go with a Larea or Atakubi at left back. Davies isn't there. We don't have a young, promising left back I can think of that we could put in there and feel comfortable that he could do a job in a competitive match. And Choinière is 27. It's not like he's old. It's not like we're sticking with like when it was like the Victoria Borjan type ages when we had these late 30 players that we just kept going with because Herdman wasn't quite ready to flip the page. But I think Choinière, Larea, and Atakubi will be playing a decent part in this Canada team past the 2026 World Cup as they should. And they're depth pieces. I mean, right now in this best 11, we have Eustáquio, Kone, Ahmed, Schaffelberg, all younger-ish guys. And if Choinière comes in there, more than likely, he would come in for like an Ahmed or Kone or a Eustáquio, depending on the situation. And they're all good players, I guess. Like, I don't know, Alex. Like, if it wasn't Atakubi or Larea this window without Davies at left back, who would you go with? Like, we'd probably have to slide Kamal Miller over there.
Yeah, well, I mean, to this point, I mean, I know we're always excited about young options. I think in the Choinière one, I think the comparable is there. Why would we give Choinière the edge when a Seeger is sitting right there, right? I think that's probably the argument that Tal's going for. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that's kind of what you're thinking, right? Like, why go with the Choinière versus Seeger? But you need guys like this on a national team, right? I think guys like Choinière, bit of an engine, right? Bit of a guy who can do everything for you in a midfield. Larea Adekugbe, right? Like Larea, this guy can play 4 positions for Jesse Marsh. You know he's going to go on and be an absolute dog for his teammates, right? Going to go in there, bring you a bit of Concacaf. It's, there's reasons to have guys like this. And what I, like about a Larea, but what I like about a Choinière and Adekugbe, they're going to absolutely fight for their spot in their shirt. And I think what happens with these guys is, okay, maybe you look at the potential of a Seeger, you look at the potential of these other guys in their positions, and you get very excited. And I think it's very reasonable. Like, I'm myself thinking long term, man, how good is that Eustáquio, Kone, Seeger midfield going to look, Josh? It's going to be fun when we finally see it. But also we have to remember, guys have to earn their space, right? Like, just because you cap tie a Seeger, you call him up, you're not just dropping him in like, all right, start, you're a 90-minute guy. Like, you kind of got to earn your play. Even Alphonso Davies, once upon a time, he was an absolute prodigy, and you come in and it's all right. You maybe you start a game here or there, you come off the bench, you got to earn your spot. And I think what I like about having guys like Choinière, Adekugbe, Larea, Laren, you can look across the roster at a bunch of these guys. They're going to fight their spot and make sure that if a youngster with high potential comes in and takes it from them, it's because they did their absolute best. And I think the national team's going to be better for it. So yeah, I think you need guys like that, and you need depth, because also, you're always an injury or two away from needing guys like Choinière, Larea, Adekugbe to step up in those scenarios, and I'm confident that they will, and they will this camp.
And Choinière is 25. I misspoke. I was right. Larea and Adekugbe are both 29. But if you're using them as an example, there's not really another option. And then the Choinière over Seeger one, not that is really, I guess, relevant because Kone and Eustáquio are fit, but Choinière is only 25 and he just moved to Europe. So this is a player, I'd say, who's trending upward. No, Alex?
Yeah. I mean,
like, right? Like 25. Like I was thinking of his brother, who I believe is 27.
Yeah, that's probably it. But yeah, I mean, he's 25. You're far from a finished product at 25. You can still adapt. You can evolve, especially as a midfielder, right? And you have to remember Choinière he's evolved a lot, right? This was a guy who was more of a winger at one point, then he was a wing back, and now he was a 6, a 8, a 10. This guy's played a lot of positions, so he's also someone who's adapted and evolved a lot in his young career.
All right, I'm going to throw a couple questions together. I'm going to try to rapid fire them. There's a lot coming in. So Alex, very quickly, do you think Promise David should have been picked instead of Bear or Tani Oluwaseyi?
I think there's an argument to be made there in terms of the cap tie, his form. What I will say about David, he's come on so strong as of late, where I do wonder if the squad was maybe already finalized before he started doing his thing. You're kind of like, ooh, that's one of those things. But I think in hindsight, yeah, you probably want to get a Promise David in here, especially when in his interview with us, he said, hey, if Canada calls, he's leaning that way. So it'd be nice to cap tie a player, promising player, no pun intended, who would love to, who could help bolster that striker corps even further, especially after Kulinovic, ends up going to Bosnia.
Yeah, no. So it's funny because we recently interviewed Promise David. We've also recently interviewed Tani Oluwaseyi, which is how I now know how to properly pronounce his last name. For anyone who's wondering, he told me it is Tani Oluwaseyi. So there we are. So I remember that. So there we go. And we do have a couple questions regarding Tani. What do you guys think about having David play false 9, almost like a cam, and then having Tani up top in place over Kyle Laren? And then I'm going to tie another one to that, Alex, and throw it over to you. So if you do, and you're going to argue, so would you like to see if you drop David a little deeper, which he does? If you want to see Tani in there, give me a reason why, and go against Atal's comment here saying Tani has 1 goal since his first ever Canadian national team call up for club and country. He also lost his starting spot for Minnesota. Why is he the next guy up? And you can also kind of reference Tani's conversation, because Tani he acknowledged the fact that he definitely should have scored at Copa America, and he's learning from it. He's hoping to come back stronger. He's a very confident guy. So kind of tie those questions together, Alex, and give me a reason for Tani and maybe a reason against him.
Yeah, well, I think a reason for Tani is that what we've seen with Jesse Marsh is he's willing to give guys, if you look good for country, he'll keep going back with you, even if maybe your club form, right? Like, we had that argument in September, October with Schaffelberg, who was maybe struggling to find his form at that time. He also, had the baby and everything like that. But then Jesse Marsh stuck with him. He was rewarded. And hey, look, Schaffelberg finished the year with a couple goals, so that at least helped from that regard. I think I see the same thing with Oluwaseyi, where it's like, yeah, he hasn't scored for Canada, but you're giving him 20, 30 minutes off the bench. It's always tough to score in those sorts of scenarios. And he's lively, he's creating chances. It genuinely does feel like when the first one falls, right? Because it's like that with strikers. So I'd say that's the one. And yes, the club form, that's probably the argument not to. And I think it's a very valid one. Although I think circumstantially, you have to remember he left Minnesota for like a month because of the whole, like he had to go to Europe. Well, he got called up to Europe. Then he was at Copa America, which probably went a lot longer than Minnesota was hoping. Minnesota, starting guys in his place because, MLS doesn't stop. Tanny loses his spot. That's the reality of these guys in MLS, which is always tough for him, right? Like you leave for so long, you can easily lose your spot with teams. So I think that's something where I'm not too plus with that, because Minnesota were awful in the summer. They were trying to throw anything at the wall that sticked, because when St. Clair left, when Tani Oluwase left, when all these other guys left for internationals, they were awful. At one point, they were like 11th in the West, and then they started experimenting, and then they've been one of the hottest teams. And unfortunately, that happened while Tanny was still coming back and finding his form. And now Minnesota are, have figured out their 11, and it's Oluwase is a 30-minute super sub. So I think there's some circumstantial things too why I'm not too worried about it, because I know long term they view him as a very promising forward.
Well said, Alex. We have a bunch of questions as well, so we'll just keep trying to get to as many as we can. You guys are crushing it today. Hopefully you're excited for the game that will be kicking off in about 2.5 hours. If you want to watch it, it's available here on One Soccer. And a big shout out to our sponsor for today's stream, tonybet, as well. This is a good question. Alex and I have touched on it a lot. If you've heard us on any stream when we talk about a starting 11, this is a fair one. But how are we skipping the 2 striker comment? It's a conversation we need to start having, because the one game they didn't start 2 strikers was our best game under Marsh. Like Greg said, you need to pack the midfield. All right. So Alex and I have made it very clear that we'd like to see a 4-2-3-1 system. I would say part of the reason we don't see it is because Jesse Marsh loves the way that we press from the front. Kyle Lair and Jonathan David do a wonderful job. On top of that, there's also the ability to have David kind of tuck in and almost create a bit of a 3-man midfield, because he's playing kind of like a 10. But with that being said, I don't hate the idea. I think Jonathan David is playing so well for Canada that maybe Jesse Marsh doesn't really want to change things up. It requires another striker to play in front of him. But if you do go over the 4-2-3-1, Alex was just licking his lips about the opportunity of seeing if Seeger's ready, it could be Seeger, Eustachio, Kone, and if not, you could even have a Chouanier in there with Eustachio, Kone for the time being. So Alex, do you think the form of Jonathan David and the way he's playing with Canada is part of the reason that Jesse doesn't really want to switch that up? And give me a prediction of how realistic is it we see a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 anytime soon?
I mean, we're seeing a 4-2-3-1, right? Jonathan David is the number 10.
Let me rephrase that. To see a system that doesn't have Larin and David in it.
Yeah, that's that one. I think more realistic than we think, just because, again, of Kone not being there the last 2 windows. Because I think it's not a coincidence that Jesse Marsh tried that 4-2-3-1 in the Uruguay game. You don't think that was intentional, in the sense that he kind of had a game to experiment. He throws Kone, Azorio, and Chouanier. Those were the 3, right? Because Eustachio was rested, I want to say.
Yes.
You can double check for me on that in terms of the Canada versus Uruguay game. There was definitely very intentional. And that's why I think if you're Jesse Marsh, you can't tell me the game after, where they're friendlies, he didn't want to keep trying that. But then Kone gets injured and he misses September, he misses October. So I'd say there's a strong chance we see it at some point. But I think David is the one kind of throwing a wrench in things, because in the lack of that, of Kone, David ends up sticking in that 10 role. And he's had some of his best games for Canada have been in the last 3 friendlies. He didn't even start in the second friendly, but the game against the US where he scored. But in particular, the game against Panama, he was phenomenal in that number 10 role. He was everywhere, playing between lines, turning guys, dropping into deep, causing all sorts of problems. And I think David's kind of making a bit of a conundrum, in the sense that, all right, there's a lot of strikers. Jesse Marsh likes having a Larin on the field, that David offers him that. But I do still think there's room for experimenting, because I think is some scenario where you have David leading the line and having Kone, Eustachio, Seager, Chouanier, Saliba, your pick of the, who the midfield is. Yes, I think Canada, that's going to be Canada's best version of themselves, but I think because of injuries, because of circumstances, they haven't had the chance to test that enough yet. And because of that, I think it's going to be a bit of a process that we see maybe play out over 2025.
Yeah, I think so too. I said it right away. It was just, I think the way David's playing in this team, I think will make it a little difficult. But to backtrack, Alex, it was Kone, Chouanier, Osorio in that.
So it was, okay.
In that starting 11 for Canada, with Eustachio not even touching the pitch. We have hit our hour here, guys, so we'll do a couple rapid fire questions, then we'll get out of here. So let's make it quick. These two will tie together. Predictions for tonight. I said 1-0 Canada. Alex said 2-0 Canada. And then I want to tie this into this other comment because it said Davies choosing to stay out. Or please give me your thoughts on Davies choosing to stay out, which we kind of touched on. Was watching TSN coverage, and they were crucifying Fonzie for missing this window, saying the captain should never miss a window. I feel load management is important and justified. Your thoughts? So Alex and I did touch on this a little bit at the beginning. And I guess we won't. There was also another comment in here, Alex, that said that Jesse Marsch kind of hinted at the fact that it wasn't 100% due to a knock, that it could have had something to do with his club contract or his, I guess, load management. So I have to go watch a couple of those videos. All we were saying was Alphonso Davies has never showed us that he will want to miss a game like this. I think if there's a reason he's not in camp, it is justified. If it's load management or a knock or whatever it may be, we thought there might have been a loss in translation about the one statement that was put out that he was fatigued. So I'll just say that until maybe have a little bit more 100% concrete information. I think that Davies is missing this window because he has to, not because he chose to. Alex?
Yeah, and again, I'd echo that in the sense that I think if Davies, and I think that you also have to remember like Jesse Marsch probably played a role in this where, maybe Marsch was seeing the contract situation and decided, all right, you know what, like, don't let Davies have too much noise around him right now because, you have your contract, you have Bayern, you have to come, you're captaining your team and all that stuff. I wonder if Marsch was also maybe like, all right, there's some outside noise and you add in the fatigue, the knock on top of that. It could also be something where it's just like, all right, you end up making that decision. And I think we also have to remember, like, this is a sign of where Canada is as a team, where they can make these discussions, and it's not like, oh, this is going to significantly alter their chances of this result. Because I think that also affects a Davies and Marsch's decision of, if this is Canada 2-3 years ago, Davies is on the plane and playing because they absolutely need him, and they're at a point where, of course, they need him. If they're going to beat any of the top 20 teams in the world, they're going to need him. But there's clear confidence there for that first Suriname. They don't, and they maybe don't want to risk him on that turf. They don't want to risk him in that heat, the drought. Like, there's so many reasons. And I think, yes, the traditional view is that as a captain of a national team, you see it, especially I think in the wake of Harry Kane's comments where he really went like, I think England comes first. Guys got to represent their team, because obviously England had a whole wave of guys pull out of Nations League. That maybe that's where that mindset comes from. But I think Davies is more, captain's all about, your actions. And I think in terms of actions, again, we said it earlier, like Davies is Cayman Islands, Bermuda, we said it, Curacao. He's been there for all these crazy games that if you miss one, you can afford him the benefit of the doubt. Of course, if it's a pattern, then that's where you can maybe really start having those discussions. But for one window, way too premature.
Absolutely. Plus, we have guys that can step up. We were talking about them earlier. Larea, Atakubi, good opportunity for these type of players. And Alphonso Davies does have a bit of a history with injuries as well. So hopefully whatever maybe he's going through right now, he'll have a very quick recovery. Or if it is fatigue or needs a mental break, that stuff is important as well. So I wouldn't be crucifying because of his past, and we don't know the whole story yet. And especially when you see all these different reasonings, there's definitely not a concrete reason out there yet, at least not one that I'm 100% confident in believing. So that'll wrap it up, guys. Hopefully you enjoy the match tonight. There'll be a lot of coverage here on One Soccer. Be sure to tune in to watch the game. Alex and I will be back for a morning after stream after the second leg as well. So if you guys want to come and join us on there to kind of recap the window, the 2 matches, and the game itself, hopefully seeing Canada move on to a Nations League semifinals. Thank you again to tonybet for being our sponsor, and on your guys' way out, drop a like, drop a sub. We'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.